Today we're on top of a parking deck in sweltering Las Vegas, Nevada to get an early peek and a quick turn behind the wheel in this, the all-new Kia EV6. Now, it's not the first electric vehicle that Kia has ever built, but it is the first to use the dedicated electric vehicle platform, or EGMP, that's shared by the rest of the Hyundai Motor Group. Now, enough talking about it, let's get behind the wheel. Now, when I say quick turn, I mean I had just barely enough time to drive the car and form an early opinion, not to mention film it, which is why you're enjoying this B-roll footage while I get you up to speed. First up is the rear drive EV6 long range with its single 225 horsepower motor and 258 pound-feet of torque. As specified by the long range designation, it's powered by a 77.4 kilowatt hour battery. But right now we've got paddle shifters right here that let us select our level of regenerative braking. So we can go from almost no regenerative braking, just a little bit, all the way up to what's called the I-pedal mode, which is your one pedal driving. We're gonna use that for the course. Here we go. Quick 0 to 30 run. That's pretty good. Again, not a huge runway here, but pretty good pickup from the 200 and some odd pound-feet of torque that we've got here, despite the lower horsepower. Now, one of the interesting things about Kia's tuning of this platform versus Hyundai is, in typical Kia fashion, they've decided to go a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more sporty. So we're expecting a little bit of a stiffer ride from this than, for example, the Ioniq 5 with which it shares its platform. I expect that that vehicle is going to have a little bit more of a comfortable soft ride, but this is pretty smooth. Again, this is a very smooth course with just one sort of speed hump in the middle of it. It feels pretty good. Again, you might think that with less power than the all-wheel drive version, this would feel a little bit wimpy, but it's got plenty of torque. Enough torque, I reckon, just based on this first impression, for most people to, do their highway merges and their pulls away from the stoplight without feeling like this vehicle is underpowered, despite the weight of that big old long-range battery. Now, rear-wheel drive with the long-range battery is going to give you the longest possible range of any EV6 configuration, though Kia hasn't exactly released the EPA numbers. Now, we do know with the smaller of the battery packs in rear-wheel drive, we're going to get over 300 miles of range. So we're expecting big things from this with something like 40% more battery. Okay, let's give this regenerative braking test again. So we're in I-pedal mode. You step on the gas, you lift off, and it just brings the car all the way down to a stop without having to touch the brakes at all. It's my favorite part about electric driving is that sort of control that you get with one pedal driving. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but stick with it. Trust me, it's worth it. Enough of that. Let's get into the more powerful all-wheel drive version with the big battery. The all-wheel drive model adds a second motor to the front axle, bumping total output to 321 horsepower and 446 pound-feet of torque. It's capable of sprinting from 0 to 60 in around 5 seconds, which I definitely didn't get to experience on the short rooftop course set before me. Okay, now we're in the all-wheel drive version with the larger battery. Now, here in the United States, we're only going to get the Kia EV6 in 3 specs. There's rear-wheel drive with the standard range battery, that's your 300 miles. There is rear-wheel drive with the long-range battery that we don't know how many miles it'll do yet. And we also have the most potent version, the all-wheel drive, which is only available with the long-range battery. Here we're looking at around 313 horsepower and a pretty respectable 0 to 60 time of around 5 seconds and change. Now, we're not going to be able to get that full 0 to 60 time on this very short course, but I think we can get a pretty good feel for the acceleration. So here we go. We're going to pop into I-pedal mode, my favorite way to drive an electric car. We're going to pop into sport mode, because that's always fun. Woo! Oh, right off the bat, a lot more power, obviously, than the rear-wheel drive version. And also a very interesting sound sort of coming from the rear. I don't know if my microphone picked that up, but it was sort of a electric, futuristic sci-fi sound that sort of indicates the power. Overall, as I'm driving this thing around the course, I'm noticing more of that sort of deep, bassy sound that is sort of giving this thing a bit more of a sporty feel. Obviously, more power. That feels good when you're giving it a squirt away from a corner. Same, really sort of tight handling on this short course, very low speed course, but I can already tell that this is gonna feel pretty good on city streets. So here we go, one more acceleration run. And that's 30. So pretty good power for getting off the line when you're pulling away from a traffic light, or if you need to do a quick merge onto the interstate. You're gonna have plenty of acceleration with this all-wheel drive powertrain. And the thing is, there's a better one coming. Late in 2022, there's going to be a GT version that uses long-range battery, presumably, and even more powerful dual electric motors for somewhere in the neighborhood of 576 horsepower. I don't even want to imagine what that feels like, but I'm looking forward to it. Again, these were far from optimal conditions, but I was able to get a pretty good feel for the acceleration, steering, suspension tune, and the performance difference between the rear and all-wheel drive powertrains. Okay, I'll be honest, when I found out I was going to be driving the EV6 on top of a parking deck today, I expected it to be pretty boring. But color me impressed. This thing's done a fantastic job of making a very strong first impression under these limited conditions. And I'm looking forward to getting more time behind the wheel, particularly of the dual motor version, but especially of that more powerful GT coming next year. I'll get my chance when the 2022 Kia EV6 launches early next year. Pricing hasn't yet been finalized beyond the $58,500 fully loaded EV6 First Edition, based on the long-range all-wheel drive, which is already fully reserved. And while I'm impressed with what I've seen, I'm reserving final judgment for when I'm able to actually test on the roads. Until then, head on over to theroadshow.com for more details, specs, and to learn about the EV6's cool bi-directional charging port that can send power to appliances, devices, even other EVs. It's pretty cool. Also, check out our new YouTube channel. It's called Roadshow News, and as you might guess, it's dedicated to covering just the news that happens in automotive every week. You'll find the link in the normal places.